Okay, yesterday you started to explore the equations of circles, and we looked at them mostly from the standpoint of given information about the circle, like the radius and the center, can you write the equation of the circle? And what we were focusing on was what we call standard form for the equation of a circle. And again, I'm going to relate that to a line, and we use y equals mx plus b slope-intercept form for a line because it's friendly. If you know the slope and you know the y-intercept, you can easily graph it. So that's really why we like the standard form versus the general form for the equation of a circle, because when it's in standard form, you can easily identify the center and the radius. So today we're going to extend the concept one step further, and we're going to actually graph the circle. So instead of graphing a line, we're going to graph a circle. I would actually encourage you to go ahead and try the first 3 problems. I think that you will be just fine to do those on your own, but if you'd rather watch the video, that's fine. If you want to try and pause it and then watch it to see how you did, that would work out well also. So what I'm going to ask myself is 2 questions. I'm going to first ask myself, what's the center of my circle? And recall that that comes from the h and k values. So if you're looking at your formula or your equation in standard form, we've got x minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared is equal to r squared. That's really something you need to memorize, just like you have y equals mx plus b, your slope-intercept form, memorized. So picking out my center, I'm going to take my h and my k values. So in this case, I've got a 3 and a 2. But notice that the signs switch. The minus sign is actually a part of the equation. So when you have x minus 3, as we have right here, that means that the h value, the x-coordinate of my center point, is a positive 3. And then likewise, the y value of my center point is, my k value, is actually a negative 2 instead of a positive 2. And an easy way to think that is that we have to actually end up with y plus 2 in here. Y minus a negative 2 would give me plus a positive 2. So that's one way to think of it. And then I think the radius is actually the easy part of this. R squared equals 16 because of this part right here matching up with my r squared. So I'm taking the square root of 16, which is 4. Okay, putting that on a graph. Some of you are going to be bothered by this because we're not going to be totally exact unless you want to pull out your compass. I'm going to do some estimation, but I can do a pretty decent circle. I'm going to count over 3 and down 2, and that's going to be my center point. So let's put a point right there. And then radius is 4. So remember, you can count horizontally and vertically on your graph. So I'm actually going to count over 4 to the right and say that I'm going to have a point there. Up 4, down 4, and then left 4. And that gives me 4 points. Not great, but I can draw a pretty decent circle. Just don't make it look like a square. Remember, we're drawing a circle. So I'm just going to estimate from here and try to make it go through those points and be somewhat round. And if I'm doing this on my iPad, you can probably do better on your paper, but you get the idea. Okay? Now would be, again, a good time to try one on your own. If you want to follow along, of course, that's fine. I'm going to go a little bit quicker this time. Center point is negative 4 because I'm switching the value. Y doesn't have anything with it, so it's really a y minus 0 or plus 0. So 0 is my y coordinate of my center. That means negative 4 0 is my, whoops, don't do what I just did. Negative 4 0. I switched my coordinates. There's my center point. And then my radius is square root of 1, but remember, square root of 1 is just 1. So what we're going to end up with is this wee little tiny cute circle right here. That's going to be up 1 and over 1 in all directions. Okay, moving on to number 3. Number 3 should look a little bit more interesting to you. And if you're staring at that saying, I have no clue what's going on, understandable. What's the difference here? Well, the difference is that our equation is not in standard form. Our equation is in general form. So we don't have that x minus something that we're looking for to figure out what the x-coordinate of my center is, and we don't have the y minus something. So you might take a guess here, possibly thinking negative 8 and positive 2, or positive 8 and negative 2 for your center. I'm going to hold off on this one. We're just going to leave that alone, and we're going to do a little bit of work below that on your paper. We're going to start by rewriting that equation. And what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to put that in standard form. Just the same as if we had an equation that wasn't in slope-intercept form, we solve for y, put it in slope-intercept form so we can quickly, easily graph it by plotting the y-intercept and then counting the slope. So let me walk you through this process. You're going to see a lot of yesterday coming up. Remember how I told you needed to be able to complete the square to do some of these circle problems? That's going to be what's coming up. So the equation we had was x squared plus y squared, I'm just rewriting this from number 3, minus 8x plus 2y is equal to negative 8. And now I'm going to actually rewrite it one more time. And this time I'm going to group my x terms together and my y terms together. So I'm going to actually take my x squared and my negative 8x, write those first, x squared minus 8x. And then I'm going to leave a blank there, and I'm going to put plus blank. Okay, that should look familiar from yesterday. And then I'm going to do the same thing, but with my y terms. So let's see, I've got a y squared and a 2y. So plus y squared plus 2y plus blank. Let's leave the negative 8 where it is. Okay, but if you notice, what I just set up is that I'm going to actually add something to the left side. That's what this plus blank means right here. Well, we know that if we're solving an equation, or if we're doing anything to an equation, we can't just add something to the left side. That's going to change the equation. We have to keep it balanced. So if I'm adding to the left, I better be adding to the right side. So whatever that blue blank is going to be, I don't know what it is yet. I'm going to add that to the right, and then I'm going to add some green blank here, which is going to be the same as that green blank there. Okay? Now, if you followed from yesterday, this is like completing the square setup, except double, right? I've got 2 of everything. I've got 2 blanks on both sides. And I tried to color code for you. What we're going to do is we're literally going to do what we did yesterday, but do it twice. So first, starting with the blue, x squared minus 8x, I'm going to complete the square there, which means I'm going to take b divided by 2. That's negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. Square it. So I'm adding 16. Okay, if you prefer to write that as negative 4 squared, that's fine, because that's what we're doing. Therefore, I'm going to add 16 on the right side. I like to finish that one off before I go to the green part, because I've got this little shortcut that I use that is whatever I have just added, that number that I squared, which was the negative 4 right here, that's actually the number that goes in the blank here and gives me my quantity squared. So I've got x minus 4 quantity squared. You might have factored that as x minus 4 times x minus 4 and then realized, okay, I've got that binomial squared. But by this point, you should be realizing that you're always going to end up with that. Okay, let's do the same thing for the green. And I'm going to figure out that I've got b is 2, divided by 2 is 1. So I'm going to be adding 1 squared, which is 1. That's a positive 1 this time. So I'm going to add 1 here, and then when I go to complete my square, I'm going to have y. This is different because yesterday it was x. And then I'm going to have that plus 1. I'm putting a plus sign between them, and if you just pause and look at the left side of the equation, that's looking pretty sweet. We've got x minus 4 quantity squared plus y plus 1 quantity squared, and this is looking a whole lot like what we talked about yesterday as our standard form of our equation of a circle. So right now, you should be able to tell me what the center of that circle is. And I know I haven't finished it. I've got to figure out that right side. But if you look at that, what's the center of your circle? If you said 4, negative 1, you're absolutely correct. Remember, I'm switching my signs. I'm taking the values that I had in red from right here and here, but I'm switching the sign. And then I need to figure out my radius, so let's do a little math over here. I've got negative 8 plus 16 plus 1, and that gives me a positive 8 plus 1, which is 9. So if I've got a 9 over here, then that means that my radius is square root of 9, which is 3. Okay, all of that work was so that you could answer the question of what's the center and what's the radius. Or really, that was kind of an implied question to do what I asked you to do, which was graph the circle. So let's go back to number 3. And you can now with 100% certainty say that your circle is going to look like this. Center is 4, negative 1. So I already answered that below, but let's go ahead and graph that for -1. And then I've got a radius of 3. So I'm going to count over 3, up 3, down 3, and then do a sketch of a circle as best I can. Okay. There are 2 more questions for you to try, just for the sake of uploading this and not making this too long of a video that takes too long to load. I'm going to stop this video. I'd like you to try numbers 4 and 5, which are both going to involve completing the square. I'm going to give you the hint that number 4, if you take a look at it, is missing something. Number 4 doesn't have quite as many terms, so the difference here is that you're only going to be completing the square once. I'm going to let you try it from there. 5 is going to be very much like what we just did. Try those. I am going to make an additional video and post that so that you can watch them and follow along, or just scroll to the end and check your work. Okay?